The thunder didn't wake her. It was the absence of sound that did, the sudden, deafening silence when the ancient air conditioning unit coughed and died, when the hum of the old hotel's electrical system stuttered into nothing. The darkness followed a heartbeat later, so complete it felt like drowning. Then the arm tightened around her waist. Lumi's eyes flew open in the blackness. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. Her body went rigid with the cold shock of recognition. There was someone in bed with her, and then memory crashed over her like the rain against the window. The hotel. The storm. The last room. Him. She lay perfectly still, cataloging the weight of him, the solid warmth of his chest pressed against her back, the slow rhythm of his breath stirring the fine hairs at her nape, the unconscious curl of his fingers against her stomach. He pulled her close sometime in the night, close enough that she could feel the buttons of his shirt through her thin cotton top, close enough that his heartbeat was a steady thrum against her shoulder blade. Lightning split the sky outside, and for one blinding instant, the room was illuminated, the faded floral wallpaper, the heavy oak dresser, his face inches from hers. In that flash, she saw him clearly. High cheekbones. A jaw that could cut glass. Dark hair that had escaped whatever careful styling it had endured, now falling across his forehead in a way that made him look younger. Softer. His mouth was relaxed in sleep. The tension she'd seen in it all night, the tightness around the corners, the careful compression, had finally released. He looked almost peaceful. Almost. But it was his hand that held her attention. His hand, splayed across her abdomen, fingers curled into the fabric of her shirt like he was afraid she might disappear. Lumi exhaled slowly. Carefully. This is fine, she told herself. This is just biology. The room got cold. He reached for warmth. It doesn't mean anything. She should move. Should extract herself before he woke, and the careful boundaries they'd established, the invisible line down the middle of the king bed, the mutual agreement to pretend the other didn't exist, became a source of crushing awkwardness. She should. But she didn't. Because in that moment, with the rain hammering against the glass and the world outside in chaos, the warmth of him felt like the only solid thing left. And Lumi, who had spent years building walls around herself, who had perfected the art of being present without being vulnerable, who had never once let herself need anyone, Lumi closed her eyes and let herself be held. It had started 7 hours earlier, in the lobby of the Riverside Hotel. She burst through the doors soaked to the bone, her suitcase wheel squeaking in protest as she dragged it across the worn carpet. The woman at the front desk had looked at her with the practiced pity of someone who'd been delivering bad news all night. "I'm sorry, miss. We're completely booked. The storm has grounded all flights, and every hotel within 20 miles is full." Lumi had opened her mouth to argue, to plead, to bargain, to do whatever was necessary to find a bed, when the doors behind her swung open and he walked in. He was just as wet as she was. Dark hair plastered to his forehead, expensive suit clinging to his shoulders like it had been painted on. But where Lumi had accepted her soggy fate with grim resignation, he looked personally offended by the weather. Like the rain had singled him out for special persecution. "There has to be something," he'd said, his voice low and controlled, but she caught the edge beneath it. "A closet. A storage room. I don't care." The clerk had looked between them, her expression shifting. "There's one room left. A suite. But it's the honeymoon suite. King bed." Lumi felt the heat rise to her cheeks. Beside her, the man turned to look at her properly for the first time. He was tall. Taller than she'd first thought. And his eyes, she noticed, were winter gray, cool and watchful. They swept over her in a quick assessment, cataloging her wet clothes, her exhausted face, the way her fingers were white-knuckled around her suitcase handle. "Fine," he said, before she could formulate a response. "We'll share." She blinked. Excuse me? It's a king bed. We're adults. We can draw a line down the middle and pretend the other doesn't exist. He turned back to the clerk. We'll take it. Hold on, Lumi said, her voice sharper than she'd intended. I didn't agree to, unless you have a better option? He raised one eyebrow. Because I don't see any other rooms magically appearing. And I don't know about you, but I'm not planning on sleeping in the lobby. Lumi opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. He was right. She hated that he was right. Fine, she ground out. But there are rules. Rules, he repeated flatly. Rules. No crossing the line. No funny business. And if you snore, I'm using your pillow as a weapon. The corner of his mouth twitched. The first crack in that careful facade. And if you steal the covers? Then you'll be cold, and you'll deserve it. He held out his hand, water still dripping from his sleeve. Ethan. She took it, his palm cold and wet against hers. Lumi. Fair enough, Lumi. It's a pleasure to be trapped in a storm with you. The bar was almost empty. Just the two of them, the bored bartender, and the rain hammering against the windows like it wanted in. He ordered whiskey. Neat. She ordered the same, because she was too tired to pretend she wanted something more complicated. He raised an eyebrow. You don't strike me as a whiskey person. You strike me as someone who judges people by their drink order. A pause. Then he laughed, a real laugh, low and surprised, like he hadn't expected to find anything amusing that night. Okay. I deserved that. She shrugged. Not that I'm keeping score or anything. Of course not. They sat in silence for a moment, the ice in his glass the only sound. She watched him. Not staring, she was too good for that, but observing. The way his fingers curled around the glass. The way he'd hung his jacket on the back of the chair with precision, even though it was ruined anyway. The way he kept glancing at his phone, then putting it away. Tell me something true, she said. He looked at her. What? You keep looking at your phone like you're waiting for a disaster. You're not actually in finance. And you're not married, but you're running from something that feels like one. She tilted her head. Am I warm? His face went very still. That's a lot of assumptions. Am I wrong? He held her gaze for a long moment. Then he laughed again, but there was something hollow in it. No. You're not wrong. I'm not trying to pry. She gestured vaguely, you look like you need someone to see you. And I'm good at seeing. Are you always this direct? Only when I'm tired and wet and annoyed at the universe. She took a sip of her whiskey. So yes. Always. He stared into his glass. I'm supposed to be somewhere tomorrow. Somewhere important. And I don't know if I want to go. Then don't. It's not that simple. It never is. She set down her glass. But simple and easy aren't the same thing. Simple is just clear. Easy is what you do when you're too afraid to look at what's clear. He looked at her for a long moment. What do you do? I stay in hotels with strangers and drink whiskey in thunderstorms. She smiled, just a little. I'm not the person to ask for advice. Maybe that's exactly who I should be asking. She didn't answer. But something in his tone made her chest tighten, just slightly. A tiny crack in the armor she'd built around herself. She ignored it. He'd told her more than she expected. Not everything, she could see the gaps, the careful omissions, the way he'd stop himself before saying too much. But enough. Enough to know he was a man who'd been living someone else's life for too long. Enough to see the exhaustion beneath his polished exterior. They'd moved from whiskey to coffee, from coffee to more coffee, until the bar closed and they had no choice but to face the room. The room with one bed. "Look," he said, standing in the doorway like he was preparing for battle. "I'll sleep on the floor." "Don't be ridiculous. It's a king bed. There's plenty of room." "Lumi, I'm not going to wake up with a crick in my neck because you're trying to be chivalrous. We're adults. We can share a bed without it meaning anything." He looked at her for a long moment. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." She wasn't sure. Not at all. But she was too tired to care, and his hesitation, the genuine concern in his gray eyes, made something in her chest soften in a way she didn't want to examine. They'd established the line. The invisible boundary down the middle of the mattress. The rules. The mutual agreement to pretend this wasn't the most intimate thing either of them had done in years. She'd fallen asleep facing the wall. And somehow, somewhere in the night, she'd ended up in his arms. Morning came slowly. The power flickered back on sometime around 6, the hotel's ancient wiring humming with relief as the lights buzzed back to life. The air conditioning coughed and groaned. The rain finally eased, becoming a gentle patter instead of the assault it had been all night. Lumi woke first. For a moment, she was disoriented, the ceiling was unfamiliar, the sheets smelled like cheap detergent and something else, something warm and masculine. And then she felt the weight of him, and everything rushed back. He was still holding her. His arm was still around her waist, his chest still pressed against her back, his breath still warm against her neck. If she'd been any closer, she'd have been wearing him like a second skin. She needed to move. She needed to extract herself before he woke and realized, but as she started to shift, his arm tightened. He made a soft sound, something between a sigh and a protest, and pulled her even closer. "Stay," he murmured. It was barely a word. Probably wasn't even a word, just a half-formed sound from somewhere deep in sleep. But Lumi felt it like a physical blow. Warm and sudden and terrifying. She couldn't stay. She had to go. Had to create distance, had to pretend last night hadn't happened in any of the ways it had actually happened. But she didn't. She lay there, frozen, as the minutes ticked by. The world outside the window was waking up, traffic sounds, birds, the rumble of a garbage truck. Normal sounds. Ordinary sounds. Nothing about this was ordinary. The moment he woke was imperceptible. His breathing changed first, the deep, even rhythm becoming shallower, more conscious. Then his body tensed, his arm going from a relaxed weight to something more rigid. Lumi felt the exact second he realized what he was doing. "Shit," he whispered. She felt him pull back, felt the cold air rush in to fill the space where his warmth had been. She let herself be pulled, rolling onto her back and opening her eyes with what she hoped was convincing drowsiness. She said, as if she'd just woken. As if she hadn't been lying there, heart racing, cataloging every second of his unconscious affection. Ethan was sitting up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. He looked like a man who'd just realized he'd spent the night spooning a stranger. His jaw was tight, his eyes shuttered, and there was a faint flush creeping up his neck that he was trying very, very hard to hide. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to, I don't normally, don't worry about it." She sat up too, arranging the sheets around herself with practiced modesty. It was cold. We were both asleep. It happens. He stopped, swallowed. Does it happen? She almost laughed at the expression on his face. To people sharing a bed in a power outage? I assume so. There are probably scientific studies. I wouldn't have, Ethan. She reached out, touched his wrist. He went still, his eyes dropping to the place where her fingers rested against his skin. It's fine. It was just a bed. Just a cold night. We don't need to make it weird. He looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, the tension in his shoulders eased. You're remarkably calm about this, he said. One of my many skills. She let go of his wrist and swung her legs over the side of the bed. I'm going to take a shower. When I come out, we can pretend this entire conversation never happened. She found it in the bathroom. His suit jacket was hanging on the back of the door. She remembered him doing it the night before, careful and precise, even after the storm had ruined it. She'd been too busy trying to find dry clothes to pay much attention. But now, in the quiet of the morning, she noticed the inner pocket. White paper, folded neatly, peeking out just enough to catch her eye. She told herself she shouldn't look. It was none of her business. She unfolded it anyway. A wedding invitation. Thick cream cardstock, embossed with gold lettering. The kind that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Ethan and Jenny join us as we celebrate the union of Jennifer Marie Wallace and Ethan Alexander Brooks. Saturday, June 28, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. St. Catherine's Cathedral. Lumi stared at the invitation for a long moment. Then she looked at the date. Today. The groom had spent last night in her hotel room. He came out of the bathroom looking freshly shaved, his hair tamed into something resembling professionalism. He'd put his suit back on, and if she hadn't known better, she'd have thought he was just another businessman, just another traveler. But she did know better. This is you, she said, holding up the invitation. Ethan Alexander Brooks. Groom. He went very still. The mask slipped into place, the careful control she'd seen him wearing all night. But she could see the cracks beneath it now. The tension in his jaw. The way his fingers curled against his palms. That's not, he stopped. I mean, that's me. That was me. It's not, it's complicated. Tell me. It wasn't a request. She didn't say it unkindly, she was too careful for that, but there was steel beneath the words. He ran a hand over his face. We broke up 6 months ago. But her family had already paid for everything. There was pressure, so much pressure, to just go through with it anyway. To save face. To not embarrass anyone. And you left. I told her I couldn't do it 3 days ago. She told me I was a coward. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I found myself on a train, then a plane, then here. Trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do. What are you supposed to do? The wedding's in 5 hours. Everyone I know is there. My parents. Her parents. 100 of our closest friends who are going to be very confused when the groom doesn't show up. Lumi looked at the invitation again. Then at him. Are you going? She asked. He met her eyes. I don't know. They left the hotel together. The storm had passed, but the streets were still wet and glistening under the weak morning sun. Lumi had an extra hour before her flight. Ethan had, well, he had a crisis. Thank you, he said, as they found a cafe near the river. For not running screaming from the hotel room. You didn't have to, thank you. For staying. He paused, and she saw something flicker in his eyes. I didn't know how to be alone last night. And you made it easier. She didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. They found a table by the window. The cafe was warm and cozy, the kind of place that felt like it had always been there, mismatched furniture, a cat sleeping on the windowsill, the smell of fresh bread. A woman, maybe 60, with kind eyes and flour on her apron, greeted Ethan like he was a regular. She ordered hot chocolate and a Pinot chocolate. He ordered black coffee and nothing else. You're not hungry? She asked. Not really. Eat anyway. She pushed her plate toward him. You look like you haven't had anything in days. He stared at the pastry. I'm not asking. She smiled, just a little. Consider it a gift. He hesitated, then broke off a piece. You're very good at that. At what? Making people do things without making them feel like they're being told. She shrugged. I learned that pushing gets you nowhere. Waiting gets you everything. He was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something? Sure. How did you get so good at reading people? She considered the question. I pay attention. To what people say, and what they don't say. To the pauses. The things they almost tell you before they change their minds. She gestured vaguely at his face. Like the way you keep touching your left sleeve. His hand froze mid-gesture. You've been doing it since we sat down, she continued. Every time you think about the wedding, you reach for your cufflink. But you're not wearing cufflinks, just regular buttons. It's a habit. Something you do when you're nervous. He looked at his hand, then back at her. That's impressive. Or invasive. Depends on your perspective. I'm going with impressive. He took a sip of his coffee. She's going to marry someone else. Lumi wasn't sure if he was talking to her or himself. Is there someone else? There's a backup plan. Her family's always been good at those. His mouth twisted. A very supportive best man. The kind who's been waiting in the wings for years. I'm pretty sure he proposed the night after I called things off. Pretty sure? She said she was going to say yes. I didn't ask for details. He stared into his coffee. She deserves someone who can commit. Someone who won't run away at the last minute. You're here, though. What? You're here. You came to see her get married. That doesn't sound like running away. She paused. It sounds like you just weren't running toward. He stared at her. That's a very generous interpretation. I have a gift. She smiled. Also, I'm a copy editor. It's my job to find the right word for things. Ethan and Jenny split, he said, testing it. That's not a very good title for a love story. No. But it might be a good title for a freedom story. He looked at her for a long moment. I'm supposed to go to the church. To stand in front of everyone and pretend I'm okay with watching her marry someone else. That's what's expected. Is it? Isn't it? She reached across the table and took his hand. I think the only right thing is the thing that doesn't make you feel like you're drowning. What if nothing makes me feel like I'm not drowning? Then you're doing it wrong, she said simply. You're trying to do the right thing instead of the thing that's right for you. They walked to the church together. It wasn't planned. She'd meant to catch a cab, to head to the airport, to leave Ethan and his complicated life behind. But when he'd asked her to come, just for a few minutes, just to see how it went, she'd said yes. Because the way he'd looked at her when she said yes had been the most honest thing she'd seen in days. The church was beautiful. Old and grand, dripping with flowers. A wedding planner's dream. Lumi stood at the back, watching Ethan move through the crowd of people who knew him, who loved him, who expected him to be the groom. He played the part well. Shook hands. Smiled. Made small talk about the weather and the decorations and how lovely everything was. But she saw it. The tension in his shoulders. The way his smile never quite reached his eyes. The way he kept glancing toward the door. She was about to leave, about to walk away and let him figure it out on his own, when someone caught her arm. A woman. 50-ish, elegant, with expensive perfume and eyes that assessed Lumi in a single glance. Diamond ring on her left hand that could have bought a car. "You must be one of Jenny's guests," she said. "I don't recognize you." Lumi could have lied. Should have lied. But something in the woman's tone, sharp, expecting deference, made her stand a little straighter. "I'm with Ethan." The woman's smile flickered, like a light with faulty wiring. "With him." "I see. He's not going to marry her." The words were out before Lumi could stop them. "I don't think he ever really intended to." The woman's face went very still. Her grip on Lumi's arm tightened, just slightly, just enough to make a point. "I think you should leave," she said quietly. "Now." "I'm not going anywhere." "You don't understand. This family isn't his family anymore," Lumi said. "And if you want him to be happy, you'll let him make his own choice." The woman stared at her for a long moment. Then she released Lumi's arm and walked away without another word. Lumi's heart was pounding. She'd just done something stupid. Something dangerous. Something that had nothing to do with her. But as she watched Ethan across the crowded church, she realized she didn't regret it. He looked up. Saw her. And for a moment, his expression shifted, the mask cracked just enough for her to see the fear beneath it. She smiled. Just a little. Just enough. Then she nodded toward the back door. He caught up with her in the alley beside the church. "Lumi." She turned. He was breathless, his tie loosened, his jacket gone. He looked like a man who'd just escaped a burning building. "I can't," he stopped, swallowed. "I couldn't," she waited. "Everyone was looking at me," he said. "Everyone was waiting for me to do something. Be something. And I couldn't breathe. Ethan, I don't know who I am without this. Without Jenny. Without the wedding. I don't know what I'm supposed to be." She stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes. Close enough that she could feel the heat off his skin. "Then figure it out," she said. "Take your time. You have nothing but time now." "How do you do that?" He was searching her face, his voice raw. "How do you just let people be whatever they need to be?" "I learned," she said simply. "I learned that trying to fix people just breaks you. So I stopped. Now I wait. I see. And sometimes, that's enough. You're not like anyone I've ever met." "I know." She almost smiled. "That's usually a deal breaker, not a compliment." "Not for me." She felt her breath catch. "Ethan, I don't know what comes next," he said. "I don't know who I'm going to be when I walk away from this church. But I know," he stopped, rubbed the back of his neck. I know I don't want to say goodbye to you. Ethan. Tell me I'm crazy. Tell me this doesn't make any sense. Tell you I don't feel it too? He blinked. Wait. What? She laughed, a small, breathless sound that surprised her. I keep telling myself this is insane. That I barely know you. That I have a plane to catch and a life to get back to. She shook her head. But I didn't leave. I walked to the church with you. I made a scene with some rich woman who probably has more power than I can imagine. And I don't regret any of it. He stared at her. I don't want to say goodbye either, she said. I don't know if that's stupid. I don't know if this is going to be a disaster. But I know, she stopped, laughed again, looked down at her hands. I know you're the first person in years who made me feel like I could stop holding my breath. What happens now? She looked up at him. I don't know. What do you want? I want to know your favorite book. I want to know what song you can't stop humming. I want to know, he reached for her hand, his fingers warm against hers. I want to know who you are when you're not being the calm one. The one who sees everything and never needs anything. That's a lot of questions. I have time, he said. Lots of it now. She squeezed his hand. Maybe I'll answer them. Maybe I won't. You're infuriating. And yet. He laughed, a real laugh, warm and surprised. And yet. The afternoon sun broke through the clouds, warm and golden, painting the wet streets in shades of amber. In the distance, the church bells began to ring. Neither of them looked back. He kissed her on the riverbank. It was late afternoon now, the shadows long and the city quiet. She'd told him she needed to call the airline. He'd told her he needed to make a phone call of his own, to his mother, to Jenny, to the life he was leaving behind. She'd given him space. Stepped back, given him privacy. Watched the river flow past while he spoke in low tones she couldn't hear. When he came back, his eyes were red-rimmed but he was smiling. My mother, he said. She was actually happy. She said she always thought Jenny was too much like her mother. You're making that up. I swear I'm not. He laughed. She said she was proud of me. For doing what I needed to do instead of what everyone expected. Lumi felt something loosen in her chest. That's good. She asked about you. What? I told her about you. He stepped closer. The woman who didn't tell me what to do. The woman who just made it easier to breathe. You told your mother about a stranger you met in a hotel? I told my mother about the best thing that happened to me in a long time. He was close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his eyes. I told her I didn't know your last name yet. Or your favorite color. Or why you quit the symphony. She blinked. The symphony? I remembered, he said. You told me last night. About the violin. About almost a decade. You remembered that? I remember everything you told me. His voice was quiet now. I'm trying to get you to tell me more. She looked up at him. The late afternoon sun caught the edges of his face, softening the sharp lines. He was beautiful in the way that expensive things are beautiful, but there was something else there now. Something warmer. More real. I quit because I was tired of playing someone else's music, she said. I was tired of being told what notes to hit, what emotions to feel. She stopped. I wanted to make my own choices. Is that why you copy edit? Because it lets me be invisible. I fix other people's words. I don't have to write my own. You're not invisible, he said. You're the farthest thing from invisible. You walked into a hotel lobby dripping wet and you made me laugh, he said. You looked at an invitation and you figured out my whole life in 5 seconds. You stood in a church and faced down a woman who's probably richer than both of us combined. And you did it because, he stopped, searching her face. Because you didn't want me to be alone. That's not, tell me I'm wrong. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. You're not wrong, she said quietly. He reached for her hand, his fingers warm and steady. I don't know what comes next. I don't know if we'll ever see each other again after today. I don't know if we're just Ethan. He stopped. I'm not going to make you promises, she said. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I don't know what next week looks like. I don't know if we're something or just a storm that passed through. I know that, he said. I know that. But I also know, what? He stepped closer. Close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, could see the tiny scar on his jaw, could count the flecks of silver in his dark hair. I know I've spent my whole life doing what I was supposed to do, he said quietly. I've been the good son. The good fiancé. The good ex. I've followed the script. And then you showed up, and you didn't ask me to follow anything. You just asked me what I wanted. And the answer, he stopped, shook his head. The answer was you. Ethan. I don't know what that means, he said. I don't know if I'm saying it right. I'm probably saying it wrong. But I've spent the last 24 hours feeling like someone finally turned the lights on. And I don't want to go back to the dark. She reached up and touched his face. His breath caught. Lumi, I'm going to miss my flight, she said. I'll buy you another one. Ethan. What? She looked at him. All of him. The expensive suit. The tired eyes. The way his hand was shaking, just slightly, where it touched hers. I don't know if this works, she said quietly. I don't know if this is just a reaction. I don't know if I can be what you need. Then don't be what I need, he said. Just be what you are. What if that's not enough? It already is. She kissed him. It was slow at first, tentative, careful. A question more than an answer. His lips were soft and warm, and he tasted like coffee and something sweeter she couldn't name. He made a sound low in his throat, and his hand came up to cradle her jaw, and suddenly the kiss wasn't cautious anymore. It was hungry. Impatient. The kind of kiss that said I've been waiting for this without knowing I was waiting. She pulled back, breathless. We need to stop. Why? She laughed. Because I don't even know your last name. Brooks, he said, and kissed her again. My name is Ethan Brooks. The man who wasn't there to stay, she murmured against his lips. No. He pulled back, just enough to look at her. I was looking for somewhere to be. I just didn't know it yet. The river flowed past, gray and patient. The bells of the church had fallen silent. The world was full of possibilities. They walked along the riverbank until the sun set, and the city lights flickered on like tiny promises. And when she looked at him, Lumi realized that she'd let someone see her for the first time in years. It was terrifying. It was wonderful. And somewhere in the dark, between the silence and the sound of the water, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, somewhere between strangers was exactly where she was meant to be.